to all of those things. Fear contrasts all of those things. Have you ever felt like your thinking is sometimes unsound? You ever feel like sometimes you just are not sure that what you're thinking makes any sense and you feel like it's not sound thinking? That's evidence that fear has already altered our thinking. And that's what hinders us from being able to possess, to lay hold of and possess all of his deliverances and all the promises that he has for us. God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but he's given us that spirit of a sound mind. So here's the question we need to ask ourselves. Am I partaking in that love feast of the king's table, all of those good things that he has for me? Or instead, am I constricted in the bondage of fear? God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, and it is a spirit, but he gives us his power, his love, and a sound mind. Now, fear and a sound mind cannot coexist together. Fear and a sound mind are opposites. The mind that is operating in fear, that mind is unsound, and that mind is erratic. The mind that is operating in fear always makes bad decisions. That's the deceit that we have from fear. That's how fear deceives us. Fear causes us to make bad decisions, but in the moment we're making those decisions, they feel right to us, and it makes sense. We really believe, when we're operating in fear, we really believe that we're making good, solid, wise decisions, but we're not. God gives us a sound mind. So what's the opposite of a sound mind? Insanity. Fear literally makes our thinking insane. It doesn't feel like it. But tainted by fear, our thinking becomes insane, and probably everybody else around us realizes it, except for us. How many times have you made decisions in your life, and you were in that moment of fear and anxiety, and you really thought that you were making a good, solid decision? And then after the disastrous results of that decision, you look back at it later, and you said to yourself, what was I thinking? That was insane. Fear makes our thinking insane. It is exactly what fear does to us. We think we're making good decisions, but the reality is, when we're in fear, we're not in our right mind. And so our thinking then becomes insane. It's irrational. Our thinking becomes insane, and the disastrous results always take place in our lives. So in preparation for all this, I was reading several scientific articles that were talking about research that had been done about fear, talking about what fear was. Now, I can basically summarize what they said by saying this. There's two kinds of fear. The first fear is the fear that is generated by a moment of danger. So when all of a sudden you're in a dangerous situation, fear causes us to react and respond. It's a response that is designed to protect us. It's designed to cause us to either fight, defend ourselves, or to flee. So that kind of fear, that fear that comes instantaneously in a dangerous moment, that kind of fear is a safeguard. It is set aside. It's for us. It's for our protection. But understand this, that is not a spirit. That's not a spirit of fear. That's why there's two kinds of fear. That's not a spirit of fear. That is a built-in, quick, but temporary response to a dangerous situation. That kind of fear triggers all kinds of adrenaline to flow through our body. It causes our body to be able to respond to whatever that moment of danger is, to either cause us to defend ourselves or to cause us to flee. In fact, it's that kind of fear that actually research shows, it actually makes your brain shut down different parts of your body's activities. When you're faced with a moment of fear, your body actually shuts down other activities. One of those is digestion. You stop digesting at that moment, because your body is taking all of the resources of your body and it's focusing all of that on addressing that situation and that issue. But here's the thing. When that danger passes, when that moment of danger has passed, fear ends. Fear does not remain. That first kind of fear, that fear that is not a spirit, that does not remain. Now, the kind of fear that we're talking about this morning, the kind of anxiety-based fear that the Bible addresses, that kind of fear, that second kind of fear, that is not temporary. And that kind of fear can have a dangerous, unhealthy, negative hold upon our thoughts and upon all of our thinking. That kind of fear is what constrains us. That kind of fear is the fear that is the exact opposite of the things of God. That kind of fear makes our minds unsound, and it makes our thinking insane. Now, scientific research also shows us that our minds have an amazing capability to store up all kinds of memories. But when those memories are unpleasant, or when those memories are painful, those memories can have a powerful hold on our thinking and how we think. Anxiety-based fear. So I'm talking about that fear that we've been talking about the last 2 times. That fear of things that are not real, those things that have not yet come. Anxiety-based fears. They can actually pervert your thought process. It corrupts. Anxiety-based fear corrupts your thinking. It plays tricks with your memory, and it plays tricks with your perception of reality. When we give ourselves and we yield to those anxiety-based fears, what is called a spirit of fear, when we give ourselves over to those kinds of fears, we give ourselves over to all the wrong things. We give ourselves over to all those things that cause us to wind up being in bondage. It's that kind of fear that takes all of those memories that we have the ability to store up. It takes those memories, and then when a similar situation, so if there's a bad memory that took place, your mind, when it's in a spirit of fear, it'll take those bad memories, and then when a similar situation arises, it pulls up that memory, and then it takes that bad memory, and it projects it forward into the future. So then we wind up being fearful that that bad thing that happened before may happen again. That has then changed. It is altered. At that moment, you have altered your perception of reality. Because what you're doing at that point is you're taking a past memory, you're projecting it forward into the future, and you become fearful about something that has not happened and may never occur. Look at this for an example. If I'm in a car accident, I'm certainly going to have a memory of that incident, right? I'll remember that. I'll have that memory. But anxiety-based fear will take that memory and it will project it forward. It'll project it ahead. It will change and alter my perception of reality. It'll project that ahead, and it can make me fearful of ever getting into a car and driving again. I could have gotten into a car 10,000 times previous to that with no incidents. But that one memory, when I yield myself, when I give myself over to fear, that one memory can cause me to be afraid to do something, to be afraid to get into a car and drive once again. Fear then has kept me from advancing and moving forward into the things that Jesus Christ has, the good things that Jesus Christ has for me. Fear hinders, fear constrains. And again, when we're in fear, our thinking is not logical. Our thinking becomes insane. And we're the only ones who don't realize that our thinking is insane. This is why it's so imperative for us to make sure, and I'm not going to be able to touch on it this morning. Next week we'll look at it in more detail. This was supposed to be a one-week thing on fear, but I really wanted to use fear to set up because I wanted to talk to you about Psalm 91. We're getting to Psalm 91. It's just taking me a little bit longer to get there. But this is why it's so imperative for us to make sure that we're aware of that anxiety-based fear and not allowing that anxiety-based fear to rule, because it alters our thinking, it alters our judgment, and it makes our thinking to be insane. Now, when I was reading through all those different scientific articles, uniformly, they all agreed, uniformly, they all said, there's 2 responses to fear. Only 2 responses. 2 responses, and very appropriately, those responses, in all these articles, they say the same thing. They're very appropriately called the high road and the low road. So the high road is very methodical. The high road is that thought process that is methodical and it's slow. usually when the brain is taking in new information, it takes that information through the long, leisurely route through the prefrontal cortex of your brain. The prefrontal cortex of your brain, that's the part of your brain that takes information, it analyzes it, and it evaluates it, so that then you can make logical and rational decisions. The result of taking that long, leisurely route means you make logical and rational decisions in your life. That's the high road. The high road is where logical thinking takes place. It's where moral thinking takes place. And I'm not just taking that word and applying it. Actually, in one of the non-Christian articles that was talking about this, it actually uses that word moral. So the high road is where logical, moral, and creative thinking takes place. But anxiety-based fear, now listen to this, we want to take that high road. But anxiety-based fear causes us to take the low road. The low road bypasses all of that logical thinking. It bypasses even all of that moral. In other words, it bypasses that God-centered thinking. When we have anxiety-based fear, it forces us to take the low road, and the low road goes directly to the emotional center of our minds. And then we make quick, emotional-based decisions. The low road, it is the quickest and it's the least logical path that we can take. The low road, that is when we take those anxiety-based fears. It's taking all those anxiety-based fears, and that's where the low road asks questions, or it shoots first and asks questions later. The low road doesn't apply thoughtfulness or logic to it. It's the low road. The low road is where we take all of those past memories and we bring them forward, and then we irrationally project them forward into the future. And we become concerned about things that may never take place and you may never have to worry about in your life. That's why God tells us, fear not. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Now, Satan, he wants us to take the low road. Satan wants us to be in fear. Satan wants us to take that low road. He wants us to live in that bondage of fear. He wants us to live in the bondage of fear, and he wants our thinking to be irrational, illogical, and insane. But Jesus wants us to take the high road. He wants us to release our fears and our anxieties upon him. He wants us to live in his perfect peace. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. We have a choice. We can either choose to take the high road or the low road. You have no choice when you give yourself over. When I give myself over to anxiety-based fears, I have no choice. I have taken the low road. That is the route that Satan wants me to take. When I take the high road, that is when I am able to hear his voice. You ever struggle hearing his voice? How many times have you heard somebody say, or you yourself have said, or even thought to yourself, I just don't hear the voice of God in my life. I don't hear the Holy Spirit speaking to me. It's when we take the high road. It's when we take the low road and we give ourselves over to that fear-based, that anxiety-based fear. That's when we have a hard time hearing his voice. When we take the high road, we hear his voice. That's when you hear and recognize the voice of the shepherd, the good shepherd, who wants to lead you out every day into those good pastures that he prepared just for you, knowing you specifically and knowing what he has planned for your day. But we can't hear that when we're taking the low road. And the low road is our only choice if we give ourselves over to that anxiety-based fear. The low road, that giving ourselves or yielding to that anxiety-based fear, that is the pathway of Satan through our thoughts. And when we take the low road, all those safeguards that are in place in the high road, this is what science has even proven. When we take the low road and we give ourselves over to fear, all of those safeguards that are designed in the high road cease to function. And that is when our thoughts become irrational That's when our thinking becomes insane, even though we feel like and we think that we are clearly thinking and making good and wise decisions. Now again, according to research, when we bring up past memories and we dwell on those past memories, that starts a chain reaction in our thinking. It starts a chain reaction which takes us down that low road of fear. In fact, research that was done at New York University, this is fascinating. Research done at New York University concluded this. They said that people that have evil hearts, the evil that causes people to create acts of terror, this is caused by this kind, because this is what they do. People that have evil hearts, they create a general fear of the future. Research shows that hearts, they even say villainous, evil hearts, those hearts go towards creating acts of terror because they know those acts are going to create, in general, a general fear of the future. Where does all that evil come from? It comes from the heart of your enemy, Satan. All that evil is generated from Satan. Satan wants you to dwell on past memories. He wants you to dwell on those past memories. He wants you to take the low road of fear. He wants you to be reluctant to move forward, to advance into the future, because he does not want you to possess all of those promises and the good things that Jesus has for you. You know, we live in a culture, in a society, where it is fair game for us to give ourselves over to fear. In fact, so many things in our culture really focus us towards fear and cause us to be doubtful. Yet everything in the culture that leads us towards fear, that is the enemy's attempt to get you to take the low road, because he knows that he can then keep you from possessing all of those good things that Jesus has for you. We need to make sure that we're taking the high road that he's established for us. Look, we can choose to either be in fear or not be in fear. But when we choose to be in fear, we are choosing to believe the lies of the enemy rather than believing the promises of the Word of God and the promises of Jesus Christ. It's a choice that we make. In fact, what we do when we choose to be in fear, we're choosing to take the low road, and we are making the choice to allow Satan to be the one who leads our decision-making process. That can't be good. That's why God tells us, instructs us, make sure that we take the high road. That's why God instructs us to release, to cast our anxieties and our fears upon Him. This is exactly what it says in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse number 7. I'm going to show you this in the Amplified Bible. Again, a very familiar verse, but it really summarizes exactly what we're talking about. Casting the whole, not part, not a little, not some, not most, casting the whole of your care, all of your anxieties, all of your worries, all of your concerns, all of these things will cause you to take the low road. All of your anxieties, all your worries, all your concerns. Once and for all. Once you cast your anxieties upon Him, you can release it. Let it go. It's His Word, believe His Word, so that you can cast those anxieties, those fears, and those worries upon Him, release it, and you're always taking the high road. You are free and independent. Your mind is thinking rationally, logically. You're able to have kingdom wisdom and insight. You're able to hear His voice, the voice of the Good Shepherd. Because you know what? Today, the Good Shepherd has plans for you. He's got plans out there in the day for you. He planned them for you specifically. And He says that His sheep know His voice. We know His voice. Sometimes we can't hear His voice because we've taken the long road. And that insane thinking makes it impossible for us to hear Him. But He's got plans for you. The Good Shepherd has plans for you. He wants you to walk into all of those things. This is why it's so imperative for us to make sure that we don't yield or give ourselves over to that anxiety-based fear that is so prevalent. And we excuse sometimes, I can't help it. I'm just afraid. We have a choice. It is a choice that we can make. A couple days ago, Tuesday was the 4th of July. I slept in on the 4th of July. I will tell you that I slept in around 10 o'clock. Because if I say 10 o'clock, if I say around 10, that means it could have been like 9:30 or 9:45 instead of the 10:20 that it actually was. So I'm just going to tell you that I slept until around 10 o'clock on 4th of July. So by the time I got up, Donna was already working away on something, so I didn't want to bother her. And I just went into our living room and I sat down in a chair. Now, I was looking out the window, and our living room wall, we have these two oversized sets of sliding glass doors. So they're oversized. So basically, our whole back wall is just like looking through glass. And in our backyard, we have lots of grass, we've got lots of old trees, we've got lots of new trees. There's always, I'm just sitting there watching, I'm just watching all these birds flying by. And I was amazed, because most of the time there's like 2, 3, or 4 birds all active within my field of vision at any moment. And I could not go, I would time it, I could not go more than like 3 or 4 seconds of seeing no birds. There's birds everywhere back there. We had all the common birds like robins and cardinals and sparrows. There's all kinds of other ones. There's some beautiful birds. And there was, we've got 2 kinds of finches. We've got goldfinches, house finches. There was chickadees. There's nuthatches. There's bluebirds that are there. It's just beautiful to sit and watch all these birds. And as I'm sitting there watching all these birds flying around, I think, wow, there's a lot of birds out there back. We have a lot of birds because Donna has all these bird feeders. She's got all these bird feeders in the backyard. You can't go to any window in the back part of our house and not have some bird feeders within your vision so that we can watch the birds. So I'm sitting there watching all these birds, and there's literally, I'm thinking there's got to be like 250 or 300 birds in our backyard at any one moment. This is great. And as I'm sitting there watching all this quietly, this is what the Lord said to me, as He brought this to my mind with this message. He said, imagine if all of those birds had the same fears and anxieties that you have sometimes. Imagine if birds had that kind of anxiety. Those birds in our backyard, if they were paying attention, they would know that Donna is the lady that fills up all those bird feeders. Donna is the source of all the food that goes into those bird feeders that keeps them fed. They probably also noticed that, at about 8:15 every morning, Donna opens up the garage door, the lady who puts the feed in the bird feed, gets into her car and drives away. They'd also notice that every night about 5:30 or 6 o'clock, that lady who puts the bird seed in the bird feeders comes back into the garage, and at some point she fills up those bird feeders again. But if those birds were anxious and fearful, if they gave over to that kind of anxiety-based fear that we do, the next morning that Donna drives out of the house at 8:15 in the morning and drives away, those birds would be saying, there goes that lady. She's the one that puts the bird being in the trees or flying through the air. Their moment of vulnerability is when they're on the ground. So if you have 200 to 300, 250 to 300 birds all curled up in the fetal position, whining and crying, they are vulnerable. And the Holy Spirit said to me, that is what happens to you. You make yourself vulnerable to all of the things of the enemy. You make yourself vulnerable. When you give yourself over to that anxiety-based fear. For God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love. His love feast that He has established for us at the King's table, and of a sound mind. These are the things that God gives us. So my question is, for me, and you can ask it of yourself, are my thoughts taking me on the high road? Are they trusting in Jesus Christ and relying upon Him? Are they trusting in Jesus and relying upon Him for all things, regardless of how things might appear in my life? Are my thoughts on the high road? Or instead are my thoughts on the low road of Satan? And on that low road, it bypasses all that trust in the Lord. I can answer that question by answering this question. Is my life dominated by fear? Or is my life dominated by being in His perfect peace? It's one or the other. This is what it says in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 26, verse number 3 in the Amplified Bible says, "You will guard him and keep him in perfect and constant peace, whose mind, both its inclination and its character," we could talk about this verse for a while. "Its mind, both its inclination and character, is stayed on you, because he commits himself to you, leans on you, hopes confidently in you." Commit to taking that high road. Commit yourself to believing in the promises of God. Commit yourself to that high road and not yielding to that anxiety-based fear which so easily overtakes us and overwhelms us. Now we can all understand that fear is unhealthy for us. Fear is a spirit. It's a spirit that is contrary to the very Spirit of God. And perhaps even as we're thinking about this, perhaps we even realize how often we've actually already given our mind and our thoughts over to that low road of fear. And once we give ourselves to that low road of fear, we start to initiate fear's response. And fear's response is bad decision-making and insane thinking. So how do I get my mind back on the high road? How do I get this mind back on the things of God? How do I get this mind which God designed and created in me? How do I get that mind back on the high road? How do I stop projecting all of those fears? How do I stop projecting all those bad memories and all those fears? How do I stop irrationally projecting them forward, which all that does is paralyze me with fear, and it's paralyzing me with fear about something that has never happened and may never even exist. How do I do that? Well, the very beginning of that answer, and I emphasize it's the beginning, the very beginning of that answer is found in Matthew chapter 6. This is Matthew chapter 6, verse number 25. "Therefore I tell you, stop being perpetually uneasy, anxious, and worried." God's not going to tell you to stop doing something unless He's giving you the power to do it. We'll talk about that more next week. Stop being perpetually uneasy, anxious, and worried about your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, or about your body, what you shall put on. Is not life greater in quality than food, and the body far above and more excellent than clothing? How do I stop being in fear? I choose to have my mind stayed upon Him. So instead of thinking about those problems that are before me, or in a lot of cases, it's thinking about those potential problems that might be before me but don't even exist yet. Instead of thinking about those things, take the high road in Jesus. Now, when I'm thinking about those good things, in essence, I'm thinking on the things of the Word. When I'm thinking on good things, I'm in the Word of God. And that is, and I emphasize this is the starting place, that is the first step in removing fear from our thoughts. We don't have to live with that anxiety-based fear about anything. And the first step in removing that fear from our lives, the first step comes from being in the Word of God. And when I say being in the Word of God, I don't mean just reading the Word of God. I mean that we are reading the Word of God and we are meditating on the Word of God. And because we're reading, we're spending time and we're meditating on the Word of God, we're getting revelation from the Word of God. And that's what we're going to learn about next week. When we look at, first of all, we're going to start with the experience of Paul in his road to Damascus experience. And we're going to start to see the very first step in how we remove that fear from our thinking. Jesus, we thank you and praise you that you have told us that we have nothing to fear. You have told us to stop being afraid. You've told us to cast our anxieties upon you. You have every good thing established for us. And we realize and understand that it is the enemy himself who puts those fears in front of us, who brings up those memories, who wants us to dwell on the past things, who wants us to start that chain reaction of going to the low road of fear, because he wants us to be fearful of the future, because he knows if we're fearful of the future, we will stay put, we'll be paralyzed, we'll be frozen, we will not move forward in the things that you have for us. So we say to the enemy, he is defeated in our lives, and we will not yield or give ourselves over to any kind of fear. We are not bound by that spirit of fear, for we have your spirit within us. We have all that your spirit brings, all the liberties and all the freedoms. And in that your spirit, Holy Spirit that is in us, we have the strength to stand when fear comes, to stand boldly and give no place to it. And we commit ourselves to be in your word, to think on all those good things, those lovely things, those noble things, those things that are praiseworthy, to meditate on those things. We commit ourselves to meditate on your word and to wait and listen for your revelation so we can hear your voice, you, Jesus, our good shepherd, as you lead us out into the day and into the good pastures you've prepared for us. We thank you and praise you in your name, Jesus. Amen and amen. Let's stand up and praise and worship in our liberty and freedom. That was great praise and worship.